Stephen Wolfram is at it again. I think he's one of those people that you can't avoid listening to, and every time I listen to him, I get inspired. So he's controversial, sometimes annoying, but he's a very, very interesting person. And he gave this talk at the Ralston College. Shout out to the Ralston College podcast. It's one of those podcasts that I find almost spiritual. They're really, really good. I can highly recommend their content. It's very deep, intellectual, but not imposing, and it's valuable. Their conversations about AI that they're having. This is the latest series that they're publishing, are really, really interesting, and it's something that I haven't found, at least not sufficiently, here in Silicon Valley, where all the AI is being built. And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? The engineers don't necessarily have the philosophical training, but also not the intention to even think about it too much, right? They built the thing, and it's other people who should be thinking about it. I think Ralston College is a great example of how the humanities can not just add value to the conversation, but actually survive, because I find that humanities in general in academia are completely obsolete. Now, this is for a different podcast. I don't want to get into this rabbit hole, but the politically influenced postmodern objectivity to the point where nothing has any value anymore. That's where the humanities have landed. Ralston is not like that. Ralston is, in a sense, very conservative and traditional, but conservative in a good way. Like, just let's go back to first principles. Let's go back to what is Western society built on, and let's just think about along those lines what we can come up with. And that's why I appreciate Ralston College. Now, the conversation that I want to talk about here is the one about AI. So what's the role of humans in AI? What's the role of AI in humans? And Stephen Wolfram said something in his presentation, the link's in the show note, that I wanted to elaborate a little bit because I think it's important. And what he said is that the laws of physics and the technology that we derive from them are a function, of course, of nature, but also a function of us and our type of intelligence that we particularly have, or that we specifically have. And this is something that I've also encountered. This is an idea I've encountered in recently in the book about cognitive science. Links in the show notes. I forgot the authors and all that, but links in the show notes. There's a psychologist, the wife of Amos Tversky. Again, I'm blanking out on the name, but doesn't matter. Links in the show notes. I think she talks about similar things. So the point is this: like, we have a certain type of intelligence, we humans, and that is because our embodiment, our constraints that nature has given us are sort of morphing us into the type of intelligence that we actually have right now. For example, we're energy constrained. We have a very efficient brain. We're protein constrained. We have a lifespan. We have to reproduce. It takes us a long time to learn stuff. So there's a lot of things that sort of constitute a human being, and from there, we have a certain vantage point towards nature. And why is that important? And I've been saying this for a while now, like, the intelligence that we're building has different constraints. It is not energy constrained, particularly not if we go to space, like Elon Musk wants to go. Like, or at least we have a lot more energy available per unit of intelligence. It is not time constrained. Like, it can do lifetimes and lifetimes worth of iterations in order to find stuff out. So it's different than our intelligence. We have a certain intelligence, and the artificial, what we call artificial intelligence, is going to be very different than ours, just by the techno, like the actual hardware is different. Our hardware and the hardware that we're building, whether that is AI data centers in space or some sort of architecture that is completely, way past the transformer architecture, it doesn't matter. It's definitely not going to be the architecture that we humans have. Now, there are some ideas of, let's say, neuromorphic compute and things like that, And that's fine. We can try to learn from our, let's say, neural network that we call brain, and maybe use some of those ideas for the artificial neural networks. But I think I personally am very convinced that this is going to be a bit like other inventions. For example, airplanes are inspired by birds, but certainly function very differently and have a lot of advantages and disadvantages relative to birds. And certainly, one of the big advantages is that we can do a lot more, a lot faster, and over much, much bigger distances in flight with airplanes than we could do with birds. But then birds, for example, they can do, they can fly, bats can fly in caves and stuff. It's rather difficult to do it. We can do it with drones, particularly, autonomous drones, but it's more difficult. So point being, the artificial intelligence that we're building is going to be very different. I think, therefore, we're also going to find new physics. I think this is not a belief. This is almost certainly going to happen. Because if you believe that the hardware constraint is a function of the kind of physics that you come up with, thermodynamics, E equals mc squared, all that stuff comes from the way we are. Like, we humans are not just observers, but we're also part of the input into the evolution of physics and from their technology. And I think the AI is going to come up with all kinds of new physics. Now, the way we are doing AI right now is very human-centric. It's anthropomorphic. In other words, the AI that we're all excited about now is basically the GPT / Claude / Grok / Gemini type AI, which is trained on human knowledge from the internet. Therefore, it's very anthropomorphic. It's human knowledge that is being regurgitated. That's why I don't think we have a lot of new ideas coming out of this, and the productivity gains are questionable and all of that. However, I think Richard Sutton's idea of learning from experience, and just yesterday I met Jerry Kwarek, co-founder of OpenAI, who has a new company called Core Automation, who's also betting on a new way of architecting AI, which is learning from experience. I think the embodied AI community, particularly Tesla, but some others are also interested. NVIDIA for sure is interested in finding ways to have continuous learning from embodiment and interaction with nature. So given all this, we're already in a space right now where we're morphing away from this human-centric knowledge being regurgitated, and we call it AI. It's great, but that's not the kind of intelligence that I think is going to morph into new types of science and technology. The kind of intelligence that I'm talking about that I think has a lot of potential to actually really develop new technologies, new science, is the kind of technology that is architected and built around this new, not human way of learning, and then has its own advantages, disadvantages, and will therefore come up with new types of intelligences. So anyway, conclusion, fundamentally, there is absolutely no limit in the demand for intelligence, not because we humans are insatiable with knowledge or anything like that. It's just because nature has, and this is another tidbit from Stephen Wolfram, it's the computational reducibility. Basically, nature has its ways of doing things that are infinitely complex. And we have a certain small glimpse of that. We humans are able to capture some of that. And our artificial neural nets will capture other parts, maybe more, maybe even less, but certainly different types of, probably more of these chunks of computational reducibility, or in other words, laws of physics, or kind of the way things work kind of things in nature. And from there, we can then derive something we call laws of physics, or you can call it something else. You can call it chunks of computational reducibility if you want. And from there, we can then derive technologies. Thank you.